Marry me for one night. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because I thought Daniel Cross had finally lost his mind. He was standing in the doorway of the kitchen at 11:30 on a Thursday night, still wearing the black suit he'd worn to a board meeting that afternoon. I was holding a stack of dinner plates. He looked at me and said, "I'm serious, Mara." I put the plates down. "Then you need a doctor." For the first time since I'd started working in his house, Daniel almost smiled. Almost. Then he placed a folder on the kitchen counter. "My family is trying to take my company." That got my attention. Daniel Cross was 39, worth more money than I could comprehend, and the CEO of a construction company his father had built from nothing. He wasn't the kind of man people expected to lose, but apparently losing was exactly what was happening. His father had died 6 months earlier. The company had been placed under a temporary family trust, and Daniel's older brother, Victor, had spent those 6 months convincing the trustees that Daniel was too unstable to run it. The final vote was scheduled for the next morning. Daniel had one problem. His father's trust agreement contained an old condition. If Daniel wasn't married before the vote, Victor could claim that Daniel had failed to meet the family's succession requirements. It sounded ridiculous, but the trust had been written decades earlier when family businesses were apparently run like medieval kingdoms. "You want me to pretend to be your wife," I said, "for one night? And tomorrow?" "You walk away." I looked at the folder. "How much?" He named an amount. It was enough to pay my mother's mortgage, enough to clear the debt I'd been carrying since my younger brother's accident, enough to make a person forget every warning bell in their head. I pushed the folder back. "No." Daniel frowned. "You didn't even read it." "I don't need to." "You need money." I looked at him. "So do you." That shut him up. I'd worked in Daniel's house for almost 3 years. I'd seen him fire people for small mistakes. I'd seen business partners flatter him to his face and insult him behind his back. I'd also seen something nobody else seemed to notice. Daniel trusted almost no one. And tonight, he looked terrified. "I'll do it," I said finally. His expression changed. "But I have conditions." He nodded. "Name them." "Everything is written down. I don't owe you anything afterward. You don't control where I live, what I do, or what I say. And if your family tries to humiliate me, I leave." Daniel stared at me for several seconds. Then he said, "Agreed." I didn't know it then, but that conversation would cost his family millions. And it would reveal that Daniel wasn't the person who needed saving. His family was. The next morning, I arrived at the Cross estate wearing a plain black dress I'd bought 2 years earlier for my mother's funeral. Daniel's assistant wanted to send me back upstairs. Daniel stopped her. "She's coming with me." The family meeting was held in a private dining room. Victor was already there. So was Daniel's aunt, 2 trustees, the company lawyer, and Daniel's mother. Victor looked at me and laughed. "You brought the maid." Daniel pulled out a chair beside him. "She isn't the maid today." Victor leaned back. "Then what is she?" Daniel looked at me. I knew what he expected me to say. So I did. "His wife." Nobody spoke. Victor's smile disappeared. Daniel's mother looked like she'd been slapped. Then the lawyer asked for the marriage certificate. Daniel handed it over. Victor examined it. His face changed. "Where did you get this?" "From the courthouse," Daniel said. Victor looked at me. "You're actually married?" I nodded. He didn't know we'd completed a legal civil ceremony 2 hours earlier. The agreement was real. The marriage was real. But the relationship wasn't. At least that was the plan. Victor stood. "This changes nothing." Daniel's lawyer disagreed. "The succession condition has been satisfied." Victor turned toward the trustees. "There's more." He opened a second folder. He claimed Daniel had secretly transferred company money into an account overseas. The room changed immediately. Daniel looked at the documents. "I never authorized that." Victor smiled. "Then perhaps you can explain the signatures." Daniel couldn't, because they looked exactly like his. One trustee asked whether Daniel had anything to say. He didn't. I looked at the documents again. Then I noticed something. A date. I remembered that date. I'd seen it before, not in Daniel's office, in the kitchen. Months earlier, Victor had visited the estate while Daniel was away. I'd been cleaning the study when Victor left a folder on the desk. He'd forgotten it. I'd never opened it. But I'd noticed the company letterhead. and the date printed across the top. The same date. I looked at Victor. "Can I see that document?" He laughed. "Why?" "Because the signature isn't the problem." Everyone looked at me. I pointed to the bottom of the page. "The company seal." The lawyer leaned closer. "What about it? That seal wasn't used 6 months ago." Victor's expression hardened. I continued. "I know because I cleaned Daniel's office. The new seal arrived after the old one was damaged. The document you're holding has the new seal." The lawyer took the page. Victor said nothing. The room became tense. Then the lawyer made a phone call. 5 minutes later, he confirmed it. The document had supposedly been signed 3 weeks before the new company's seal existed. Victor's face drained of color. Daniel looked at me. I shook my head slightly. There was more. I knew there was more. That afternoon, the trustees postponed the vote. Victor was furious. He followed me into the hallway. "You have no idea what you're doing." I turned around. "Actually, I do. You're a housekeeper." I was. He stared at me. I continued, and I pay attention. That night, Daniel found me in the library. "You knew about the seal." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know what Victor was planning." Daniel sat down. Then he asked something I hadn't expected. "How did you know?" I told him. He listened quietly, and then he said, "There is something else." He opened a drawer and removed an old envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from his father. Daniel had found it that morning. It said that Victor had been attempting to manipulate company accounts for years. But there was no proof. Until now. Daniel's father had suspected his own son, and he'd left one instruction. If Victor ever tries to remove Daniel, examine the Northbridge contracts. Daniel looked at me. "Northbridge is the project Victor claimed I stole money from." That was the moment everything clicked. The forged transfer wasn't designed to steal from Daniel. It was designed to make Daniel look guilty. Victor intended to use the fake transaction to remove him from the company, then take control of Northbridge through a shell company. Daniel's lawyer spent the next 6 hours examining the contracts. By midnight, they found it. Victor's signature was on a side agreement transferring ownership of a major subcontractor to a company secretly controlled by him. But there was another problem. Victor had used company funds to make the purchase, millions of dollars, and he'd done it without board approval. Daniel could have destroyed him immediately. Instead, he asked me what I thought. I said, "Don't expose him yet." Daniel stared at me. "Why?" "Because he'll deny everything." I pointed toward the contract. "Let him lie." The next morning, Daniel went into the family meeting alone. I stayed outside. Victor arrived confident. He believed the trustees were going to remove Daniel. Then Daniel placed the Northbridge documents on the table. Victor stopped breathing for a second. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Explain this." Victor tried. He blamed an employee, then the employee, then the company's accounting department, then a dead consultant. Every explanation made things worse. Finally, the lawyer played a recorded phone call. Victor had unknowingly discussed the transaction with the subcontractor's owner 2 weeks earlier. His own words confirmed everything. The trustees removed Victor from every management position that afternoon. The company launched an investigation. The money was recovered. Victor wasn't destroyed. But he lost the control he'd spent years trying to steal. And Daniel? He kept the company. But he changed something else. Our marriage. 3 months after the vote, Daniel came to my apartment. Not the mansion. My apartment. He stood outside with no lawyer, no contract, and no folder full of money. "I want to ask you something," he said. I crossed my arms. "Another business proposal?" "No." He took a breath. "I want to keep being your husband." I stared at him. "You remember this started as an arrangement." "I know." "And I don't work for you anymore." "I know." "You can't buy me." "I know." I waited. He smiled. "I finally understand why you made me promise that." I didn't answer immediately, because somewhere between the fake marriage, the family betrayal, and the documents hidden in that library, something had changed. Not because he was a millionaire, not because I needed his money, because Daniel had finally stopped treating people like assets. A year later, we held a small wedding. No trustees, no business partners, no family negotiations. Just the people who actually mattered. Victor wasn't invited. My mother was. Daniel's company continued growing, but he never forgot what almost happened. He created an independent board. He separated family ownership from management, and he stopped assuming that the quietest person in the room had the least to say. As for me, I never went back to being invisible. I eventually opened my own property management company. Daniel offered to invest. I told him no. He laughed. Then he asked again, 6 months later. I said yes. But this time, I negotiated the contract myself. Because that was the real lesson. I hadn't changed Daniel by becoming his wife. I changed his life the moment I refused to let his money decide my value. And in the end, the woman his family thought was just a maid became the person who helped expose the betrayal happening inside their own company. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks isn't powerless. They're simply watching. And when the right moment comes, they already know exactly where the evidence is. What would you have done if you were in my position? Would you have taken the money and walked away after the deal ended, or would you have stayed long enough to uncover what was really happening? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about betrayal, hidden secrets, family power struggles, and consequences that arrive when people least expect them, subscribe to Real Cold Revenge.